Welcome to Scorched Earth and the general reading for the sign of Virgo, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of August. I hope you are well and happy birthday to you if you are an August Virgo. Right, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. You can have 3 cards for Virgo, please. There's the first one. We have the 4 of Wands. And I feel like it landed in the reverse. So I'm going to put it there like that, but we're going to see what cards come out next to it to clarify it, because it might be that actually it was supposed to come out the other way. It's just from my angle it looked reversed. Now I have a current energy for Virgo, please. Oh, thank you. We have the Knight of Swords. It's Gemini energy. One more that's coming towards. We have the 5 of Cups. Right. I don't want you to get too concerned about this. We do have the Devil at the bottom of the deck. Makes me feel like that 4 of Wands possibly might be there. No, let's not prejudge anything. Okay. The 5 of Cups at the bottom of the deck. I'm going to shuffle that back in. Tell me about the 4 of Wands, please, in the reverse. We have the Page of Swords. And whatever that is, the Queen of Wands there. It's Aries energy. Tell me about the Knight of Swords. Well, there's that 5 of Cups again, right there. And we have the World, right. Okay, tell me about the 5 of Cups. We have the Lover's card, Gemini energy again. And we have the 6 of Wands, right. I'm not going to fuck around, Virgo. The crux of this reading, straight from the off, I can tell you, is about completely flipping your mindset. It's about flipping the way that you are seeing a situation that you are either in right now in front of you, or one that has a more historical basis for you. Because before I even get into the individual cards, right, we've got the Shadow card at the bottom of the deck, is that Capricorn card of the Devil, and then we also have the Lover's card appearing here for you. Now the Lover's card is a card of a choice, right? It's a card of choosing something, not necessarily, it's not particularly significant sometimes what you're choosing between. It's the fact that you're standing up and making a decision, conscious decision in the first place. It's a card of conscious co-creation, so it's like, well, you know, whatever energy you put into something, that's the thing that's going to grow. But the interesting thing about those 2 cards is they are the same card. They are the same energies, right? The Lover's card is numbered 6, the Devil card is numbered 15. You reduce that, you come down to 6. But even the way that the cards are structured, we have one kind of, you know, angel or demon, you know, appearing in the center, and then we have 2 naked people either side. Now, in the Devil card, these people are usually chained by the neck. In the Lover's card, they are free. They can wander around, they can do what they want. It's speaking to the primacy of consent. That same message is carried through in the Devil card. Because even though they be chained by the neck, they're not chained hard. It's not right up there against the larynx, you know. I'm going to pull it out of the Waite Smith deck so you can see what I'm talking about here. It's going to be the very fucking last card of the deck, isn't it? Just for shits and giggles. Yeah, right. Here. So there's the Devil card. Just take a minute to drink that all in. Right? You see how they're chained to that plinth there? And then we have the freedom and consent, free will, implied in this one. Now, the reason why I'm drawing attention to the chains around the neck is because if they really wanted to, if they thought it was possible, they could take that off and they could walk away from this way. The Devil's power only exists where you allow it, allow him to have it. I mean, that's the message of this here. You know, for some of you, this is pointing to a type of learned helplessness, and there may well be good reason for that. You know, you may well be, and we've certainly seen a lot of that in the last 2 years. You may have been trampled down completely into the dirt, but there is a strong message here about reinvigoration of life coming through for you. I'm seeing that. August seems to be a kind of crunch time for you to make a decision as to what direction the rest of your life is going to go into, because it's 5 of Cups. God, I knew there would be a reason for this. I came across this little cartoon on Instagram. It was yesterday or the day before or something like that, and it said grief is like a pat of butter, right? And you put it into the puff pastry, and it's big and it's blocky and you can't really do anything with it, and you just got to keep folding it in, folding it in, and folding it in, and folding it in, and eventually the grief never goes away, but it melds with everything else, right? And it can turn into something beautiful. And the very last picture was a croissant, and it's kind of base and it's kind of simple, or basic and kind of simple. But when it comes down to it, that's exactly what I'm seeing here for you. You can choose to keep that pat of butter out on the side, because you can't do anything with it, right? You can't manipulate it. Let's say it's in the fridge or even in the freezer, something like that, right? It's in a static place. It's only by working with it and working it into you do you actually get any kind of result from it, right? Whether it's a croissant or not. I'm probably kind of mangling the cartoon a little bit, but I noticed it and I thought, oh, that's going to come out somewhere. I know it is. And I actually don't really even feel like reading these cards in a linear fashion like I usually would do for you, Virgo. I'm not. I feel like we need to go for the big guns first, and then we'll look at the details. But this month it's all about a choice, and you get to decide, right? Whether your butter is staying in the fridge or even in the freezer, untouched, all sharp edges, wrapped up in some foil, or whether you're going to take it out and you're going to start working it into something else. It never goes away. Whatever this 5 of Cups represents to you, and I think it probably doesn't just represent one situation, I think it probably represents myriad situations that have come together over the years to create this solid pat of butter. But there is a comfort sometimes in sitting in the dark place. It's familiar and it's what we know. And when hurt and grief and pain become consistent companions, they can be more comforting than the rather disorienting unfamiliarity of things going well. I get that. I've been in that place. But what you focus on gets bigger, gets stronger, where attention goes, energy flows and all that kind of thing. And this month, it's kind of pulling you up short and saying, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on your loss? Are you focusing on your grief? Is there anything at all else that you focus on? Because although you may have had the rug pulled out from underneath you repeatedly, and maybe it's even consistently for a while, with this 4 of Wands in the reverse, we've got this notion of there being a not home, not things to be joyful about, not things to really engage in. The 4 of Wands is a card of great joy, but it is that feeling of home within you, not necessarily your 4 walls, but the people, the feelings, the circumstances, the situations. Where that is missing, and you can identify that is missing, it doesn't come back on its own. What I'm wondering about, Virgo, is if some of you are really even wanting it to come back. I feel like there's a really deep attachment to the past here that is coming up. And it feels like it's coming up in quite a considerable way. We've got the Page of Swords here. And he's looking back on it. He's kind of looking to the left as he's sitting on my table here. It's okay like that. So he's looking left, and traditionally left is kind of the past, as we read left to right and all that kind of thing, right? And we have the Queen of Wands representing the action that can be taken, and she's looking in the other direction. Like, they're not really aligned. The body is kind of pointing the right way, and mentally he knows he should be going that way, but he's looking back there. You know, he's it's almost like he's resisting getting any closer to the Queen, because in order to do that he'd have to leave whatever it is that he's looking at back here behind, and he's not ready to do that. After the life experiences that you've had, Virgo, it would be a truly revolutionary act to let it go. Because most would not be able to. And most wouldn't be able to because of that comfort and that familiarity. I mean, you look at that and you go, well, at least they're warm. At least they don't have to worry too much about getting lost or anything like that. Yeah, they're stuck right next to the devil, but better the devil you know, and all that. Nine of Swords underneath the Page of Swords. And then and underneath the Queen of Wands, the Star and the Three of Cups. Three of Swords, Six of Swords at the bottom of the deck here. I mean, Three of Swords is entirely appropriate, of course, but I think you've got so used to anxiety you don't know what it's like to live without it. It's like losing a constant companion. That familiarity is now wound up in you so tightly with anxiety, with overthinking, with being tortured by the contents of your brain sometimes, that to lose that would be a loss, another loss. It feels like the potential for another big loss in your life, because a huge part of this is your identity. And so, whilst you may know the things that you need to do, and you may even on a good day feel like you need to pick yourself up and you need to get on with things, you need to start planning for the future, you know. You need to get out there and make friends so that you can have those relationships that bring value to your life. At the same time, you don't want any of that. Not really. Not when you dig down really deep into it. I mean, for some of you, this may only be for one of you. There's a possibility that there was an Aquarius who was important. And just going to throw it in there, there was some sort of third party sort of situation there. And it seems like it's taken the legs right out from underneath you, but you are being really pushed to make a decision this month. And in some ways you could say, well, my refusal to make a decision to move on from where I am is a decision in itself, and you would be absolutely right. But it's asking you what it is that you find threatening, what it is that you find scary, what it is that you find so terrifying that you would rather stay where you are than break out into the light. Now, the interesting thing is about this is that you've done an awful lot of work on yourself, and I know that because I've seen it happen over the last 2 years. I feel like we've walked this road together. This feels like some sort of relapse, and whether it's just come out of nowhere and you don't really have anything that you can pin it on that's just brought it up, or whether there's just something about the passing of time, it happens. Sometimes grief hits us in waves. And as I don't even remember who I was talking to about it, for a year after my husband died, my first husband, I didn't grieve. And I thought that was because I was just very, very strong. Thank you very much. Actually alarmed me a little bit. What I discovered a year down the road was that I had literally just taken my grief and I'd put it in a box and I'd gone, no, I have people who need me. I have things that I need to do. I've got in-laws to look after. I've got children to look after. I don't get to be self-indulgent right now. I don't get to sit and think, woe is me, which is how I thought about it at the time. It goes to show you where my mind was at. But it doesn't stay stuck down. Like at some point it comes back out. And so you were in a very bad place for a long time, and bit by bit you've emerged, and particularly over 2021 you started to emerge again. But this feels like it's hit you like a train. And it would be possible to feel quite completely forgotten the word that I'm looking for. It means picked on. Like quite picked on by the universe. But the Nine of Swords tells us nothing if it does not tell us that perspective is everything. There's no undermining what you have experienced. There's no undermining how deeply it has affected you. And if there's any sense in you at all that is what I mean, then I would very respectfully ask that you remember that I'm coming from a place of great compassion for you in these things. But this wave that seems to have hit you, that's brought everything up to the surface again and had you perhaps retreating to that familiar darkness, is coming up so that you can choose to do it differently. I mean, you can't deal with something if you don't know what it is, right? That's obvious. But there have also been points in the last 2 years where even if you knew what it was, you couldn't have dealt with it. Like you were too much in shock, you were too numb, you were too completely depleted, too exhausted. I think that you're much stronger now than you give yourself credit for. And I feel like this relapse or this resurgence or whatever it is, where everything's come back up to the surface again, I feel like you've been looking at this in entirely the wrong way. I feel like you've been looking at it like, well, I'm just fucking shit at this. I don't even know why I bother putting in the effort. Like, everything's just crap, and I should just get used to things being crap because they're never going to change. Well, there's the wolf that you're feeding in that one, right? These are not new age idle platitudes that I'm coming out with here. You know, it's the idea that grief is a process. It is not a state. We have spoken about this before. I'm almost certain of it. You're not supposed to stay there. You're supposed to move through it. There are levels to it. It doesn't ever go away. And in some ways, it does form part of your identity, whether it is bereavement, whether it is a major relationship breakdown, whether it's a combination of the two. Well, we've seen all sorts of losses that Virgos have suffered, and particularly in the last 2 years. But where you have been engrossed in that, completely encompassed in that, there's a possibility of a light going on somewhere. I'm looking at this Knight of Swords here, and I just think it's beautiful. It's the best Knight of Swords I've ever seen. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a maze behind her there. And she's quite clearly getting ready to enter it. But she's not going in blind. She's taking a light with her. And, you know, bearing in mind, the tarot speaks in symbolism. The maze that it seems like you're entering here is possibly your own head. And you might say, well, I'm really familiar with the inside of my own head. I know what it's like. And it's like, no, you know what it's like when you take the same route every time. Those synapses fire in the same way each time. And you end up at the same place. And then occasionally, you know, when you've got a bit more energy, you come back the same way you went in. But consider that route to be like those 3 cups. You're just greasing the groove. You're going back the same way and then following the back. You know, it's this neural pathway that's been created here. It's time to start striking out and finding a different pathway. You may still be going along the same themes. You may be still exploring the same events, memories of events, reactions to events, whatever it is. But there are new ways that you're being asked to look at them because Seven of Swords and the Devil. I think that you are, honestly, I think that you're pulling the wool over your own eyes at this point now. Because there seem to be only 3 cups. And there's only one route into the maze and there's only one route out of the maze. Like, that is devil behaviour. You've got a bit of movement. There's a bit of license there to move around. But it feels to me like the devil's just moved the bars of your cage out a little bit further so that you feel like you're actually engaging with stuff when you really aren't. When it, you know, it makes you feel like you are living when you actually are not. Like, things are at such a point now that it is a risk to pull away from that familiar darkness, you know. And particularly if you are at a point now where your very identity is defined, at least in part, by the losses that you have suffered and the ways in which you have been crushed over the years, then to remove that would leave a vast space, and that can be utterly terrifying. So rather than looking up from the 3 cups that are on the ground and noticing that there is all of this around you, better that we just keep focusing on those 2 cups, the 3 cups on the ground. It's a coping mechanism, but it's one I feel that you're being jolted out of this month, should you choose to allow it to happen. Because that axis between the Lover's card and the Devil card revolves entirely around consent. And the interesting thing is that the consent is necessary for both of them. You know that old saying, whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you're right in both circumstances, both instances. That's what this is here. Right? I can do it, I will do it, I want to do it, I'm motivated to do it. I can't do it. I don't know how. I'm stuck here, I'm trapped. Doesn't matter how much I would like to get out of this, I can't. That's right too, because that's where your energy is going. It's going into that state of reinforcing that feeling that you have. But that only happens because you consent to that happening. If you say, well, I used to think I can't, but now I'm thinking that maybe I could. Maybe it's possible. I might have to do things a little bit differently. The devil doesn't like that. You have to do things the same way over and over again, because the devil is that cycle, being stuck. just a minor adjustment of thinking, a lifting of the head from the 3 cups. You could look behind you, see that the 2 cups are still there. You could look up and see that there is, some sort of castle thing in the background. You can even see that there is a bridge that is crossing a river. There is a way of traversing this great body of water here. Your emotions, to get to a place of safety. But you have to pay attention to what is at play here, because this requires conscious will. This relies on subconscious panic reaction to things, Goodness. Oh, it's a chicken, that's fine. Lover's card and the 6 of Wands. The possibilities for you to break out of something that has been definitely with you for the last couple of years, but potentially with you for considerably longer than that, is presenting itself to you, Virgo. And the one thing that you need to drop is one of the things that you are renowned for. The overthinking. I was literally talking to a very dear Virgo friend of mine this morning. Or listening to some messages that he'd sent me, and he said, second guessing myself is, is what I do. And then, worry about whether I made the right decision, and worry about if I could have done it differently, and then cross-examining myself on it. And I giggled because it's a bit of a trope, but it's a Virgo thing. Like this and this together are working in tandem to keep you in a place where a wider appreciation of the beauty that still remains in the world, the wider appreciation of the potential that is still available for you to work with in the world. Are not seen by you. And we just keep going on this rabbit wheel. Rabbit. What the fuck is a rabbit wheel? Hamster wheel, and it goes that way round. Round and round and round and round. Justice card, Libra, Page of Swords. Oh, bend over. There it is. Got the 6 of Pentacles there, speaking to the need to bring balance to you. I mean, there's always going to be a bit of this, and there's always going to be a bit of this in your life. But what you want is for, this to play a little less of a role in your life than this. And nobody ever gets it right? It's a process. We've got to work through it. But in time, our willingness to put our energy into that, being like, I'm gonna own everything. I'm gonna just own my shit. It's gonna be great. Gives him less of an opportunity to get a foothold onto you. Can change your life in an instant. It's not easy, but it is exceedingly simple. And I think this is where most people fall down, is that notion that it's so simple, it can't possibly have any validity, it can't possibly have any weight. What do you mean I can choose to do X, Y, and Z? I can choose not to give the devil my energy. Do you know what I've been through? I'm fairly certain I will have said something like that myself at least half a dozen times in my life to people who were giving me very simple words of advice that I just thought were so simple that they couldn't possibly work. It is not easy to implement those things, but you cannot deny, can't make it complicated, because it isn't. We've got all 3 swords cards, Justice, which is Libra, we've got the Page of Swords, and we've got the 4 of Swords here. This is an epiphany. This is a mental expansion. that sees that it is possible for you to have peace. It is going from the dark to the light, right? I'm not saying that you're going to be a being of light for the rest of your life, Virgo, because frankly, you know, you're too familiar with the dark to just leave it all behind. But you can work it into your pastry. You can wear it. You can wear it. I think half of the problem is this feeling like you need to participate in your environment and the people within your environment on a level that makes them comfortable, right? Because it's all about community, isn't it, right? It's all about what makes other people comfortable, and then we can all just kind of live together and it'll be great. Except that that's not really authentic. It would be inauthentic for you to be walking around and being all like unicorns and butterflies and ice cream, thank you very much, because it's not who you are. Not now. You are changed. But what has changed within you is not a loss of capacity for joy. What's changed is that you've experienced things that have been very hard, extremely challenging, and that have brought you wisdom of a sort that you probably would rather have not had. But still you have it. And you also have your consent. You know, whether you're holding on to the past because you just want things to go back to the way that they were, or whether the very thought of things going back to where you were gives you a fucking panic attack, that clumping onto the energy is producing the same thing. It's clumping down on it. You need to let the light in. And although the Justice card in the upright is a really good one, I wonder if part of the problem is that you've been holding out for justice. And the things that you've experienced can't be fixed like that. You know, maybe in some ways you've been waiting for some sort of external balancing force to come in and, you know, punish people or have some sort of restitution offered to you. And the fact is that I don't think that there's any way that that can happen. And so your recovery and your healing and your embracing of a new kind of life that you could lead, if you consent to, is held in abeyance. Because you're like, no, I need justice first. I need these things to be fixed. I need to see somebody punished for this. I need them to understand how much they hurt me. I want my person back. So this latching on to justice, whether it's legal justice or a kind of universal justice, is actually creating an injustice in you. And until you get to a point where you can kind of see past that, where you can accept that what you are holding on to in the past, whether you want it back or whether you absolutely don't want it back, because it was trauma inducing, it's yet another one of these circles that you're just going to keep going around and around in. Now, I feel like your body is trained to be traumatized. That's what your experiences have led you to. And at this point, it feels like you don't really know anything else. And the only thing that brings you joy is the thought of what you had possibly before coming back. Obviously, if it was not a fun situation, then that's not what you want. And that's kind of even worse, because then it's like, do you even know what joy is? Do you know what it feels like to experience that? Well, let's not pitch too high at this point. You know, kind of wandering around in a state of bliss and feeling connected to all might be a little bit beyond what you are capable of experiencing at the moment, but you can certainly take steps. And mental peace has to be the starting place. Because you are not going to wake up one day and everything's just going to be better. It feels like there is effort and energy that you need to put into walking towards that path. And that means saying goodbye to the devil and saying goodbye to the familiarity that the devil brings with him. That illusion of safety by staying there. This is a pretty heavy reading in some ways, but it's really quite significant in terms of what it is that you could possibly achieve this month. Because you have that Lover's card, you have that Six of Wands, you even have the World card, drawing things to completion. You have the ability to light your own way, even if you are going somewhere that is unfamiliar to you. And just being able to sit and work out what it is that you are focused on, to the exclusion of everything else, will give you enough of a clue as to the direction that you need to be going in. This is really interesting, Virgo. I'm going to go over to Vimeo now. We're going to explore this a little bit more because I really do think that this is a very important month for you. So if you would like to join me over there, the link is down in the description box for the Vimeo. You could come over and join the Patreon community if you like. The link for that is also down there, and then you'll get access to all the extended content for no extra cost. So you could look at your moon sign or your rising sign, or Mars, Venus, whatever floats your boat. But if not, do know that this everything's held like this at the moment, and it's sort of asking you to pick one way or another. Like I said, deciding not to make a decision is also a decision in and of itself, and it is one that will have consequences. I don't think that you can hide away from the energies here that are asking you to commit to a course of action. Right, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.